So I'm going to go over some really basic sewing techniques. Sewing a seam is the most basic of sewing skills to learn. It's so easy to do, and there's just a few things you need to do to make it really simple. For this project, I'm just showing you on some scrap pieces of fabric so that it's perfect for practicing. I'd recommend that you do the same as well. Use some small pieces of fabric that you don't mind throwing away. It's just to practice on. So what you will need is a sewing machine. Everybody's sewing machine is completely different. They all have separate settings. It depends on what your sewing machine needs, so you must check the instruction manual. So you want to start by placing the fabric right side to right side and pinning along that line. Make sure you pin carefully onto the fabric so that it's easy for you to sew. You need to make sure that you take out the sewing pins before you start stitching your line, because it can be dangerous to stitch over the pins. Sewing a seam is really good. The easiest thing to do on a sewing machine is back stitching. It's really important to back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. Back stitching is like tying a knot, so it locks the stitches in place. Without it, the seam can open up, and this can make your fabric unravel. So make sure that you insert the needle into the fabric and make sure that there is 1.5 inch seam allowance once you've stitched the pieces together, as you can see in this video. So now we're going to be sewing a basic hem. It's super simple. You can just do a basic roll hem. And with this, we're just rolling up the edge twice and pressing it flat with the iron. It's very important to press the seam. It's very important to press the hem flat with the iron so that it can be neat and tidy. Once you've ironed it flat, you can start by pinning the edge and stitch it with a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch if you want to. With bias binding, you need to make sure that you get the fabric in between the two edges. So the fabric needs to be in between the two pieces of the bias binding and folded over their edge, as you can see I'm doing in the video right now. I'm now pinning it in place, and I'm going to use a straight or a zigzag stitch to stitch it down and keep it in place. This is a really great easy way to finish your hems and make them look beautiful, especially on the really tricky places like the armholes and the neck holes where it's hard to get it flat with a normal roll hem. It's really nice to have the bias binding because it makes it look so neat, and all of those raw edges are encased inside of the bias binding. to be doing a French seam. With the French seam, we place the fabric wrong side to wrong side instead of right side to right side, and then we do it like a normal seam. As we've stitched it, we need to cut away the excess fabric because this is going to be folded inwards. You fold it inwards and make sure to press with the iron. After you've pressed it with the iron, you can then move on to stitching it close. When you open it up, you realize, look at how the inside looks and look at how the outside looks. It's such a beautiful seam because everything looks clean from the inside and clean from the outside. So it's a perfect seam. Pleats are very easy. To do a simple pleat, you just have to fold the fabric. I'm folding the fabric now and pinning it in place with the pins. We're just going to do a simple straight stitch across, and that will hold the folds in place. Sewing elastic is super easy. All you need to remember is that you need to hold the elastic taut and stretch it as you stitch it along. Make sure you keep stretching it as you're pulling it as you're sewing it. You must always use a zigzag stitch. Never use a straight stitch, because when you use a straight stitch, it will snap. It needs something to bounce back against, and that's what the zigzag stitch gives. It gives it that ease so that the elastic can stretch.